in daylight saving time. If not, good whatever time of day it is for you. I am Byron. Most of you will know me by my on-screen moniker Maximal816, usually in World of Warships, although today talking to you live and in person about my current project, building a PC for myself and for my son. Now, about this PC build, obviously I'm currently using a MacBook Air for my computing needs. Great device, but you can probably hear how hard the fans are working just running this stream. It will not cope with playing and streaming at the same time. My previous MacBook Pro died, but I got approval to do a PC build with my son, so downgraded the MacBook and am going with a PC. One of the intentions of this PC is to keep it as cost effective as possible, save money where I can, so that I can spend money where I want to, which is mainly the processor. Because believe it or not, when I'm not gaming, one of my favorite pastimes is working on especially live audio, but audio production. So I need pause and threads, help, and also will be expected to do the odd video build in the future. So where I'm at, you can see where I'm at, not very far along at this point in time. Of the components you can probably see in here, I've only spent full money so far on the case fans, and even then, as cheap as I can. Case, this was a good find, 25 bucks for a Nanoxia Deep Silence 1. It has obviously had a tough life. There are signs that it has been sat on at some stage, and there are signs that has been dropped at some stage. Nothing a little bit of judicious use of force couldn't fix. Case is now, I consider, as good as new. Just don't look too close. One of the things I love about this case, aside from the cost, the sheer size, there's enough size in it. It's a mid-tower case for sure, but plenty of room inside. A couple of things I have done to it. The case, when it came, had a full stack of removable hard drive holders in here. I've taken most of those out because I'm a big fan of airflow. I don't want to overclock, but I do want to keep this case running as cool as possible. A couple of the other features of this case, you'll notice a PSU placement. A PSU placement is low. Advantage of this is good for the PSU. The PSU is drawing cold air in from the outside of the case and pumping that straight out the back. Negative, though, is that you're losing a fair lot of PSU cases. A lot of CPU computer cases rely on the PSU as an extra fan for drawing out hot air. That's why they have it up the top. It sucks the hot air out. And it's the other reason why a lot of PSUs are required to be able to handle 50+ degrees case temp. That's not going to be a problem here. Cold air coming in from the outside, right down on the floor, tiled floor. So it's sucking in air in this room, probably about 18 degrees. 18 to 20 degrees year round. That'll keep the PSU nice and cool. It won't be working too hard. However, that does mean that there is one less fan cooling the case. So I need to look at things like airflow. Obviously, motherboard will sit here at the back, CPU up top, graphics card along here. My aim was to maximize front to rear airflow, keep that as laminar as possible. So I remove these drive bays, open this space right up. Fan at the front will push air onto the back of the graphics card. Exhaust fan up the top will suck the air through the CPU. Speaking of the CPU, this will be a Ryzen build. That's my intent. One, cost benefit and the performance benefit as well of the Ryzen over the Intel chips for everything but gaming. The biggest use of this PC will not be gaming. That's more of a pastime. So I need to make sure it can do the other things as good as it can. So it'll be a Ryzen build. One of the things I say about Ryzen's, if you're not overclocking, the stock CPU cooler is usually good enough. However, I do have an issue with the stock coolers in that the stock coolers are surface mount. They suck air in, push it down in through the heatsink, and it comes out all around and messes up your flow of air in the case. So I have purchased a vertical top mount CPU cooler, which will blow front to rear as well. So it'll help suck some of this air through and will continue the nice laminar flow of air, as laminar as possible, through the case. To that end as well, I am considering adding a buffer on the bottom just to direct that air up round the back of the GPU, just so I can keep the case as quiet as possible and as cool as possible. Speaking of quiet, deep silence, obviously. This case is lined on all sides except the rear with basically a skinny version of what they use for sound deadening in cars, reinforced bitumen. So this case is heavy. It's 11 kilos bare. Once you add all the gear to it, it's going to be a heavy case, but it should be really, really quiet. Does have lots of options for cooling. They say you can have up to 7 fans in this case. Currently, I have 3 fans in. Not planning on going past that unless unless it really gets too hot, and then I'll work out if I need to go water cooling on the CPU. I will, but I don't want to. I don't want to spend that much money on ancillaries. I'd rather take that money and spend it on getting a high graded CPU rather than saving on the CPU so that I can get all this other junk that I don't need. I do have a short list of motherboards. I'm not going to mention them today. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. That will be very much driven by price on the day that I have the money. I have generally a good capacity to handle small purchases regularly, but only one every now and then for large purchases. Like most people, really, you've got to save up for stuff. So that will be motherboard and CPU will be purchased pretty much at the same time. And then we'll see how we go from there. As far as hard drives go, recycled drives out of previous laptops, one solid state drive, and a couple of high-speed spindle drives. They will handle ancillary stuff. This solid state drive will probably end up being used for recording destinations, so recording audio, recording video will record to there, then I'll process from there. I do have a M2 NVMe drive that will be the main operating system drive, and I'm planning on getting another one for the games. So they will operate one to the CPU, one to the chipset. So that, yeah, okay, you want games to be fast, sure. Not that I'll really notice, but where I can save speed where I can without costing too much money, that'll be the go. So I will have about 2.5 terabytes of storage internally. The other thing I want to do as far as drives go is install a hot swap bay where I'll have probably a 3 terabyte drive that I'll use for backups. That way, when I leave the house, go on holidays, pull that drive out, take it with me. That way, if the house burns down when I'm gone, I haven't lost all of my stuff. All my usual stuff is, like most people, in the cloud, but things like photo archives and things like that stored on physical drives. I'm not paying to keep that much stuff in the cloud. Drives are cheap. Buy it once, you've got it for a long time. That's probably where my build's at the moment. As I said, this is a progress build for my son and I. He's started getting interested in computers, but what he thinks a computer is a Google tablet. It's not. A PC is a complicated thing, so I'm slowly teaching him about that the same way I did back in the day. My first computer was a 286. It had 1 megabyte of RAM and 20 megs of hard drive. You couldn't even open a photo with that these days. I did upgrade it to 2 megs of RAM, which was huge, so I could play my favorite games. But you know, 2 megabytes of RAM was enough in those days. 4 megabytes was considered more than anyone would ever need. I will be putting 32 gigabytes of RAM in this thing, not for gaming, obviously I don't need it for games, but for the video and audio production, to be able to have as much stuff going on as possible. Just reduces the load on the CPU, so I'm not shuffling things into and out of the RAM as much. I could probably get away with 16. My old MacBook Pro had 16, it was plenty, but I want 32. Just for a bit of fat there, and I can get that at the start. What I'll probably do though is I'll get 16 gigs up front, 2 chips, and then get another 2 more probably about Christmas time of the same thing, just to double that later, just to ease things up in that area. Graphics card, again, will be bottom of the range, probably second hand where somebody's upgraded. It will be an AMD card. So at this stage I'm looking at the RX 580 8 gig. That's within my budget. I'm finding them online for around the $150 mark. So that'll save money. And then this time next year, when I can afford to have another big purchase, I'll probably upgrade that to something that's a lot more current and obviously a lot better performance. At this stage, I'm only using one monitor. I'll only be using one monitor up front. I'll be using my iPad as a second monitor when I need to, until once again I've got extra cash that I can afford to spend on a decent gaming monitor. That monitor you see behind there, that's what I use as my second monitor for my laptop when I do. It is an Aldi TV. It works fine. HDMI input, it runs at 1080, it runs fine. It plays movies and it plays games like they're a movie. As far as I'm concerned, that's good enough. If I'm getting into games full time, properly, I want something better. But for now, that as a main monitor, it's 24 inches, it's big enough for me, with an iPad as a secondary screen so that I can stream and be able to watch what's going on the side. That'll be good enough for me. What you might have seen down below on my Twitch is my Discord, Maximal's Legions. Feel free to jump in there if you have any questions about anything. I mean, really anything. I'm not afraid of hard questions about anything in life. Ask them away. I'll try and answer them if I can. Anything tech related. This is my first PC build in a long time. My previous build was about 10 years ago. It was a modification of one of my wife's discarded work PCs into a home theater. 5 years before that, full build. So this is as much learning for me as it is practice. But I'll be putting these videos up quite regularly as things come. So it'll be probably another 3 or 4 weeks before I have a next bunch of components. I'll put them in, then we'll talk about them, and then when I finally boot the system up, we'll have another chat. For those interested in how this stream's running, I'm running it off my MacBook Air. It's an i5 with 8 gigs of RAM, just straight off. It does everything I need it to. Doesn't do everything I want it to though, which is why I'm building this. The camera I'm using at the moment is my iPhone 7 running through Epoch Cam HD. I think you'll agree the footage is good enough. It's also what I'm using as a microphone. I had some tech issues this morning. I had a microphone feed set up into Twitch Studio just through some audio stuff I've got, because I have a whole stack of live audio gear that will be hooked up to this properly when I start streaming through the PC. But for some reason this morning it just flat refused to work, so I've got to suss that out later. But this seems to be working for now. It's good enough for a stream that's telling you I'm going to have something better in the future. So look out for that. Pop any questions you want to in the chat on Discord so that I get to see them. Obviously chat and stream, it may disappear before I get a chance to look at it. And if you have any questions and anything you'd like to see in the future, hit me up. Until then, have a good week. Hope you're staying safe, stay well, and keep smiling.